Hey everyone, it's C-Wire back with the C-Wire Nation. As you saw by the thumbnail, I'm alluding to is Phil Spencer holding gamers hostage with the new price hikes. What's their strategy behind it? Hey, the range is hot. Time to send some rounds down range on this subject. All right, look, it should be no surprise that Microsoft is going in this direction with the price hikes on not only the consoles but the games themselves going up to $80 after Nintendo was the first to pull the trigger on it and do it. And mark my words, PlayStation is going to be doing the same thing. So none of this should be a shock to anybody. But here, in my opinion, is where I think the strategy is. The main objective here is Game Pass subscribers. Don't lose sight of that. This is Game Pass subscribers. Now, you may be thinking, well, how does $80 games have to do with Game Pass? Well, it's very simple. If you own an Xbox, you most likely are already a Game Pass subscriber. So you're paying your $21 a month, right? About $21 some change that we pay a month to play all these titles for that one price, as much as we want. The strategy here is, since now Microsoft is putting their games everywhere, that $80 cost affects them more than it affects us. Case in point, they're seeing the numbers on the return that they're getting from off the PlayStation Store with the titles that they put in there. When Gears of War Reloaded goes in there, which comes in at $40, it is just going to fly off the shelves. People are going to be buying that. They know that, and they're not going to sell that game at $80. But E-Day, on the other hand, that may be a different story. But us as Game Pass subscribers, we're going to get that through our subscription to play as much as we want. And let's not forget, we get that discount if we choose to buy the game outright. People on PlayStation don't get that. So if they want to buy these titles, they pretty much have to pay the freight on whatever Microsoft is charging for the game. So it really affects them more than it affects us. So you need to look at it that way. And I think, from the outside looking in, that this is the strategy that they're going with. Okay, this was no accident that they decided to put their games on the PlayStation. They were already doing it on PC, and that was a test bed. I guarantee it. And they saw how well it was doing there. They said, all right, now let's do it with something else. And they're seeing the return. Now, mind you, PlayStation's, they're watching. They're seeing how successful this is. But in order for them to replicate it, they're going to have to up the value of their service. Okay? Meaning they should be given day and date on their games into their service. Because in my last video, I hit on this. I'm going to focus a little bit more on it here. But, for those of you that own a PlayStation and that are heavily invested into that ecosystem, you guys deserve more, in my opinion. I mean, that's where you've invested your money. That's where you play the most. I mean, some of you may own a Nintendo as a secondary or even an Xbox as a backup. I don't know. Meet me down in the comments. Let me know what you currently have. I myself, all I have is my Xbox Series X and a Nintendo Switch. I don't have the money right now to invest in another console, let alone all the games to go with it. I just don't. I have a pretty good library on the Switch. I have games I haven't even gotten to yet, and this was bought over time. And what I have on my Xbox is, ridiculous. I got games still from last gen I still haven't played yet. Because Game Pass just keeps pumping out stuff that I want to play. So it's kind of hard to play catch up, especially when you work a full-time job. But yeah, at the end of the day, the rising cost for the games with Microsoft raising the price to 80 following suit, this is going to affect PlayStation gamers and PC gamers who don't have access to Game Pass. Now that doesn't hold true for PC because there is PC Game Pass, so they have access to that. But this is more on the PlayStation side of the house. They don't have access to Game Pass, so they have to buy the copies outright, and that will be whatever the price point they set them at. Now let's talk about the consoles going up in price. Everyone knows that for the longest time console gaming's been around, these companies take a loss on the hardware. They're selling it for cheaper than what it's costing them to produce, so they're not making any profit. And let's not forget, they're a corporation. Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, they're a corporation. What do corporations want to do? Make profit. At the end of the day, it's all about profit. If you're a corporation, you survive solely on profit. Okay? So now they're at the point, once again, outside looking in, they're like, we could raise the price of these consoles and maybe even start to break even, or maybe even start to pull ahead and make a little bit of profit off of them. And that's where they're at, especially now with the next gen on the horizon for, both companies. These systems are going to be very powerful with what they put into them. Not that the systems we have now aren't powerful. I mean, and to be honest, and once again, comment in the comment section if you disagree, but I don't think the games this generation has fully utilized the hardware. It hasn't really what they're capable of. We still haven't seen full utilization of it. So I think it's kind of weird that they're trying to go with another console right now. And that's for both companies. It's like there's still life left in these consoles, and their capabilities have now just started to become realized of what they really can do. But hey, I'm not the bean counters. I'm not the one looking at the timelines and what they think would be the best move or not. But just like I said, expect the new Xbox console, which is reportedly going to be a hybrid, which is going to be groundbreaking because you're going to have access to Steam games. Now, those you're going to have to pay for, but you're going to have access to a whole library of games that were only once available to PC players. Now that will be available to us. This hardware, I would not be surprised, once again, if this comes in somewhere about close to the 900 mark. I could just see it, and that's going to be targeting a very specific group of people, i.e. me and you. The ones that want the best hardware, because at the end of the day, the games will look and play best on dedicated hardware. That's just the truth. All these other things that Microsoft's coming out with that people can play their games on, that's for more of your casual gamers, or maybe, maybe you're on the go, you're going on a business trip, or you're going on vacation, don't want to lug your system around so you can take this handheld with you to get by. That's what that's for. Those are for the people who don't want to spend and pay the freight on a really expensive piece of hardware to go under their TV, or spend the money on a gaming rig, which anyone that plays PC will tell you that can get crazy price tag wise. That's all over the place depending on what you have in it. I mean, you can really go nuts with it. Me personally, I'm a console guy. Somebody plug it in, boot it up, and just get going. I don't want to deal with the other stuff. That's just not for me, but that's just me personally. But yeah, back to my point. This is the strategy I think they're going with. I believe that this is why they're doing that. And it's, once again, the end goal is to funnel people into Game Pass by any means necessary. So if rising the cost of games gets more people into Game Pass, that works for them. Because think about it. Let's say you only got money for one game out of all these hot titles that are coming out. So you now have to pick out of those games that you want to play, the one you want to play the most. So you pay your money, be it $70 or $80. Well, now you got to wait a while to buy the next title. Like I said, we all got bills and stuff that has to come first. Make sure there's food on the table, the electric's on, rent's paid, all that stuff. The basic necessities to live. Because at the end of the day, this is a hobby. But the hobby's getting expensive. But Microsoft has provided a pathway to make it affordable for us. So if you're Microsoft, you're thinking, well, if we raise the price of games, that affects PlayStation users unless they go out and get one of the devices where Game Pass exists, and then they get a subscription. That's recurring money every month. That's guaranteed money every month, that subscription. One game sale is just that, one game sale. You get that person's money once. Okay? Now, of course, you can say, well, what about games that have microtransactions? Okay, yeah, I get that, and people pay into that. But even with Game Pass, that's almost kind of like a double dip, especially with games like that, because, yeah, you're playing on Game Pass, but then you might be shelling out. You may have the money then to buy into the stuff that you want with the microtransactions. So it kind of frees up more money on the back end for those microtransactions, for your skins, things that you may want in any given desired game that you happen to be playing. And I think that's really the end goal, is to funnel people into Game Pass. So for those of you that are on the PlayStation side of things, don't own an Xbox or have a device that can run Game Pass, and you're scratching your head saying this is becoming really expensive, check it out. Go buy a used Xbox. Go buy a used Series S, and go get Game Pass. You can continue your hobby. You'll save money. I mean, you'll still have your PlayStation for those, onesies and twosies that come out that you may want to play, because not everybody wants to play every game that comes out, because, some people have different tastes. So, that's something to consider, especially with the way things are going now. And fortunately, Microsoft has provided a pathway for us to continue to enjoy this hobby and enjoy the games that, frankly, these developers put a lot of money and time in. And for example, and not to be long-winded here, when you look at Indiana Jones, I don't know how many hours I have in it, but I know I'm still messing around in Vatican City. I'm just in awe at the architecture and the detail that went into this game. Just staring at the detail, admiring the work that these people did on this game is outstanding. But I want to quote Next Gen 720 here. Years ago, if you watch gaming podcasts, which I'm assuming a lot of you do, you probably remember him saying, for Microsoft to be the behemoth that they are. Well, if you ask me, this is them being the behemoth that they are, buying Activision, putting their games on other platforms, and they're selling. They're just making their presence known and still continuing to make hardware. And with Game Pass doing impressive numbers, that's them being the behemoth, that they are. Like I said, we're moving into a new direction now in gaming. The business model has flipped, and we're all along for the ride. But what say you? Meet me down at the comments. I would love to hear from you and talk to you, and let's talk about these topics. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. And I hope to see you all soon. This is C-Wire. Pop and Smoke. Out.